Michael heard the scream tear through the night, so raw it felt like the sound itself had claws. He froze in his bed, chest heaving, pulse slamming against the silence. Michael stared at the faint glow of his phone, but his hands shook too violently to reach it. He whispered, "It was just a dream," but the lie echoed brittle in the room. The curtains swayed, though the window was closed, and Michael felt watched, as if unseen eyes leaned close to the glass. His reflection looked wrong, eyes hollow and strange, mouth stiff. He thought, "Don't move, don't breathe." Gravel shifted outside, footsteps heavy, deliberate, drawing nearer. His muscles locked, fear clawing through him like ice, and the silence that followed weighed heavier than the scream itself. The silence pressed down heavy, as if the air itself trapped Michael in place. His throat burned as he swallowed, heartbeat hammering too loud. Every sound grew sharper, the clock ticking, the refrigerator humming faintly, the thud of his pulse in his ears. He whispered, "It's nothing," but even he could hear the cracks in his voice. The curtain stirred again, and this time Michael swore he saw fingers trace the glass, long and skeletal. His stomach twisted, lungs straining for air. He wanted to run, but even the thought felt like surrender. Then came the sound again, gravel shifting, deliberate, slow, as if the watcher outside wanted him to know they weren't leaving. Michael finally reached for his phone, his fingers shaking violently, but the glow died before he touched it. His breath caught in his throat, terror exploding in his chest. "Please, not now," he whispered, voice strangled. The silence thickened, pressing against him like a weight, every corner of the room swallowed in shadow. The sense of eyes on him sharpened, like invisible fingers dragging over his skin. Michael's hand froze in midair, unwilling to move closer, terrified of what he might see if he looked back toward the glass. The silence broke. A sharp creak came from just outside Michael's bedroom door, and his chest locked. His parents were gone, the house empty. He whispered to himself, "No one's here but me," though the words shook with denial. The door handle shifted slightly, like invisible breath brushing metal. Michael's lungs burned as he clung to the sheets, every instinct screaming to flee, but fear nailed him in place. The knob stopped moving, silence falling heavier than sound. Michael's breath came sharp and shallow. He dared not blink, staring at the door, terrified that looking away would unleash what waited beyond. Then, from behind him, at the window, came a whisper. It was broken, guttural, almost inhuman. The words slid against his skin like knives. "I see you." Michael sat frozen long after the whisper faded, his heart hammering so loud he thought it might draw the thing closer. The night pressed against him, heavy, suffocating, as though the house itself had shifted into something hostile. He forced himself to breathe, to count, to move, but his body fought him. Finally, he whispered, "You're losing it," his voice dry and hollow. He dared to stand, legs trembling beneath him, and the floor groaned under his weight. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the corners, flickering as though alive. Michael gripped the wall, his palms slick, and dragged himself toward the mirror across the room. What he saw made his stomach sink. His reflection leaned forward a second too late, lagging, its mouth moving though his stayed shut. His pulse thundered, and terror filled him with the certainty that he wasn't alone inside his own skin. Michael staggered back from the mirror, his hand colliding with the nightstand, the lamp wobbling dangerously. He whispered, "Not real, not real," but the echo came back softer, like a mocking answer. His phone lay dead, its black screen reflecting his pale face. He snatched it up, desperate for light, but nothing came. Fear gnawed at him until he pushed himself toward the hallway. The silence felt wrong, thicker here, as though sound had been swallowed whole. He gripped the doorframe, hesitating, but the need to escape his room pulled him forward. Behind him, the faintest tap rang out, as if something brushed a glass. Michael didn't dare turn back. The hallway yawned before Michael like a tunnel, each step creaking too loud beneath his weight. He whispered, just walk," but the words faltered. Family portraits lined the walls, their faces strangely distorted, In the dim light, eyes hollow, smiles twisted. Michael's stomach knotted as he realized he couldn't remember half of these pictures ever being taken. He halted before one frame. His own younger face stared back, standing with people he didn't recognize, their expressions vacant, their eyes too dark. The breath left him as he whispered, "This isn't real," though the frame vibrated faintly, as if denying him. Michael stumbled back from the frame, his breath ragged. The silence pressed tighter, almost screaming in its absence. He whispered, "Someone's here," though the house stayed still. A draft brushed down the hallway, icy and sharp, carrying with it the faint smell of damp earth. Michael clutched his arms against the cold, forcing himself toward the stairs. Shadows curled along the railing, stretched like fingers reaching. The boards groaned beneath his feet, each step a warning in the dark. The stairs creaked under Michael's weight, each step a betrayal in the quiet. He muttered, "Don't look back," as fear clawed at his spine. The silence fractured. Another whisper drifted from upstairs, his own voice repeating words he hadn't said. "Don't look back." Michael froze mid-step, sweat dripping down his neck, chest aching as his breath shortened. His knuckles turned white on the railing. He whispered again, weaker, "Don't look back," but the voice behind him laughed softly, answering in perfect mimicry. Michael's steps faltered halfway down the stairs, his breath sharp against the thick air. The house groaned softly, as if it were breathing with him. He whispered, "It's inside," though the words burned in his throat. The shadows rippled along the walls, stretching in patterns that bent and twisted like hands reaching for him. Michael's pulse thundered, and he pressed a palm to his chest, trying to calm the pounding. Then from the base of the stairs came a sudden knock. One, heavy and deliberate. The sound cut through him, and his knees trembled so violently he gripped the railing to stay upright. Michael froze, staring toward the front door at the bottom of the stairs. The knock came again, slow, heavier this time, rattling the wood. He whispered, "Who's there?" but silence answered. His hand hovered mid-air, torn between moving forward or running back. The air felt colder now, and with every breath, frost seemed to cling to his throat. A third knock came, but this time it echoed not from the door but from the walls around him, reverberating inside the house itself. Michael staggered back, the sound burrowing deep into his skull. Michael gripped the railing tighter as the echoes faded. He whispered, "You're not real," but his voice cracked, hollow. From the shadows near the living room, a whisper slid back, perfectly mimicking his words. "You're not real." His body stiffened, ice running through his veins. He forced himself down the last steps, his legs buckling as the floor groaned beneath him. The silence after the mimicry felt worse than the sound, pressing down until his ears rang with it. Michael knew then he was not alone in the house. Michael stepped into the living room, his breath sharp and shallow. The furniture looked wrong, warped by the shadows, the edges too sharp. A chair seemed to bend toward him, though it did not move. He whispered, "Stay calm," but the whisper came back from the corner in a deeper tone, mocking him. He turned toward the sound, but the corner swallowed all light, blacker than night. The cold deepened, and Michael's skin prickled with the certainty that something inside that corner was watching him, grinning. Michael forced himself closer to the corner, each step deliberate though his legs shook. The darkness there pulsed, alive, thicker than the rest of the room. He whispered, "I know you're here," though his voice cracked halfway through. The reply came instantly, his own voice repeated back, dripping with malice, "I know you're here." Michael's chest heaved as the shadows swelled outward, brushing his skin like icy fingers. His body screamed to run, but his feet rooted to the floor as the blackness breathed before him. Michael stood at the edge of the living room, his chest heavy, his breath short. The shadows pulsed in the corner like a living heart, and his body screamed to flee. Then, the silence broke with the faint scrape of glass from upstairs. He turned, dread flooding his veins. Something moved across the window on the second floor, a silhouette far too still to be human. Michael whispered, "What do you want?" though he knew no answer would soothe him. His legs carried him backward until he collided with the doorframe, wood biting into his shoulder. His reflection in the window of the living room warped again, lagging behind his movements. When he blinked, the reflection stayed staring for a heartbeat longer. Michael staggered toward the front door, desperation tightening his chest. His hands shook as he fumbled with the lock, but it refused to turn. He pulled harder, whispering, "Let me out," though the metal rattled stubbornly in place. Behind him, the floor creaked, slow and deliberate. He turned his head, every muscle trembling, expecting the shadow, but instead he saw a man. The figure stood in the hallway, tall, gaunt, cloaked in a long coat that clung to his thin frame. Michael whispered, "Who are you?" But the man's eyes, cold and dark, gave no answer. Michael pressed back against the door, his voice shaking. "Stay away from me." The man tilted his head slightly, his movements deliberate, controlled. His voice came low, rasping, "You've felt it, haven't you? Watching." Michael's breath caught as his skin prickled. The man took a step closer, shadows stretching behind him like claws. "It never stops," the stranger continued, his gaze fixed on Michael. "You opened the door the moment you looked too long." Michael whispered, "What are you talking about?" But the stranger only shook his head, sorrow in his eyes. Michael's heart raced as the stranger stopped only a few feet away. His face was lined, his skin pale, as if he had not seen sunlight in years. The stranger whispered, "It's not me you should fear." His words cut deep, hollow and final. Michael's chest burned as he demanded, "Then who?" The stranger's gaze flicked toward the ceiling, where the boards groaned above them. Michael followed his stare, dread crawling up his spine. The stranger muttered, "It follows blood." Michael's stomach turned at the words, his mind spinning, and for the first time he realized this man was not the enemy, but something else entirely. Michael swallowed hard, fear locking his body. The stranger's voice came again, sharper this time. "It's tied to you." Michael's chest heaved as he shook his head. "No, I don't understand," he whispered. The stranger's hand rose, trembling as if scarred by memory, and he pointed toward the living room window. "It's been waiting." Michael's breath hitched as he turned, and in the glass his reflection stood apart from him, smiling faintly while his real face twisted in horror. His knees buckled, and he whispered, "That's not me." Michael pressed himself against the wall, trembling as the stranger's words echoed. The reflection in the window grinned faintly, but his own face twisted in panic. He whispered, "That's not me," his voice breaking into pieces. The stranger stepped closer, eyes dark with regret, muttering, "It has always been you. You were born into it." Michael's chest clenched as the words sank in. Memories clawed at him, fragments of nights he had long buried, his mother whispering warnings, his father locking windows twice over, never explaining why. Michael shook his head furiously, whispering, "No, they never told me." The stranger's voice hardened. "They couldn't. It follows the bloodline. Your family bound to it long before you were born." Michael's knees nearly buckled. Michael staggered toward the couch, clutching his head as fragments of memory flooded back. He whispered, "I saw it before," though he hadn't meant to say it aloud. Images rushed through his mind. An old family photograph hidden away in the attic, one where a shadow stood among them. The stranger's hollow voice cut through. "You were chosen, even then." Michael's breath came shallow, chest heaving as he remembered his mother crying alone at night, whispering prayers to no one. "Why me?" Michael demanded, though his voice cracked under the weight. The stranger's eyes flickered with pain, but he offered no answer. Michael's voice rose, desperation twisting each word. "You knew this, didn't you?" he shouted at the stranger. The man did not move, but his silence was an answer. Michael's hands shook violently as he pointed toward the darkened hall. "You knew, and you let me walk into it." The stranger finally spoke, his tone sharp and low. "I tried to stop it once. I failed. I thought it ended with me. but I was wrong. Michael's heart stuttered as the truth scraped through him. The air grew colder, the lights flickered, and the whisper returned, this time closer, filling the room like breath. Michael staggered backward as the whisper thickened, filling his ears with static and broken words. He clamped his hands over his head, shouting, "Stop it!" His reflection in the glass mirrored him perfectly now, every twitch, every scream, but its eyes glowed faintly white. The stranger's voice cut through the chaos. "It doesn't want your life. It wants your soul bound like the ones before you." Michael's chest heaved, sweat rolling down his face as he gasped, "I won't let it." But the reflection grinned wider, as if it had already won. Michael fell to his knees, chest aching as his strength drained. He whispered, "Why me?" though the words were more breath than voice. The stranger knelt slightly, his face lined with sorrow. "Because it feeds on the ones who doubt themselves most. It's fed on your family for generations." Michael's eyes stung with tears as he shook his head. The reflection behind him stepped closer, its smile widening, pressing against the glass, as though ready to crawl through. The stranger whispered urgently, "You cannot let it in." Michael's breath caught, every nerve screaming, but the glass began to crack under unseen weight. The glass shrieked, jagged cracks spreading across its surface like veins of lightning. Michael staggered backward, his breath tearing through his chest. He gasped, "It's coming through," his voice ragged with despair. The stranger barked, "Hold your ground." His words were sharp, but beneath them trembled fear. Michael's reflection grinned wider from the glass, teeth glinting white against shadow, its eyes burning like coals. Every second stretched long, the silence snapping apart with each new crack. Michael's hands shook violently, sweat dripping from his palms, staining the wood beneath him. He whispered, "Please stop," but the reflection pressed harder, glowing eyes narrowing. The stranger's tone grew desperate. "It feeds when you falter. Don't give it more." Michael shook his head furiously, but his legs trembled, knees threatening to collapse. The air in the room dropped to freezing, breath curling white as the glass bulged inward, straining against its limits like a living lung about to burst. The glass exploded with a thunderous crack, shards raining across the floor like frozen daggers. Michael shielded his face, the sting of tiny cuts burning across his arms. He stumbled back, whispering, "No, no," as the thing stepped through. It looked like him, but wrong. Its skin too pale, its movements too fluid, its grin stretched beyond human limits. Michael's chest seized as he rasped, "That's me." His own voice betrayed him, trembling with terror. The stranger growled, "It's not you. It never was." The entity's glowing eyes locked onto Michael, following his every twitch, its grin tightening with hunger. Each step it took sounded too loud, echoing unnaturally against the floorboards. Michael pressed against the couch, his heart battering against his ribs, veins pounding with cold fear. The creature whispered his name in his exact voice, but deeper, darker, twisting the syllables into blades that cut straight into his mind. Michael staggered, the couch pressing into his back, nowhere left to run. The entity raised its arm when he did, each movement synchronized like a puppet tied to invisible strings. Michael hissed, "Stop copying me," though his double only whispered back, "Stop copying me." Its grin widening with mockery. The sound of his own voice twisted and warped, made bile rise in his throat. He clenched his fists, jaw tight, whispering, "I'm not you." The reflection spoke the words at the exact same moment, the tone dripping with malice. Michael's body shook with fury and dread, every nerve screaming. The stranger shouted, "It becomes you if you surrender. Break free now, or you'll vanish into it forever." Michael's vision blurred as tears welled, his mind spinning. He thought of his mother's whispered prayers, of locked windows and unspoken warnings, realizing now that every precaution had been for this moment. Michael lunged, rage erupting through his fear. His body slammed into the entity, but the impact felt like colliding with ice, sharp, unbearable. His chest burned as freezing pain spread through his ribs. The reflection laughed, his own voice bent into a warped echo. "You can't fight yourself," it rasped, grinning wider. Michael staggered back, clutching his side, groaning through clenched teeth. The stranger shouted, "Don't fight its body. Fight its hold." His voice shook with urgency. Michael's legs quivered as he gasped, sweat dripping down his face. "I won't be you," he croaked, though his voice lacked strength. The entity's grin split wider, its shadow stretching, swallowing the floor, crawling up the walls like black fire. Darkness consumed the furniture, the pictures on the walls dissolving into nothing. Michael's breaths grew shallow, the air gone thin, his lungs straining. His skin crawled as the shadow brushed against him, icy tendrils coiling around his arms. Michael fell to his knees, exhaustion crushing him. His body shook violently, his skin pale, his lips trembling as though words themselves had frozen. The entity loomed over him, glowing eyes pulsing brighter, its grin splitting impossibly wide. Its voice came low, guttural in his exact tone, "Give in, and it ends." Michael's chest heaved, throat raw as he whispered, "I can't." The stranger crouched beside him, gripping his shoulder fiercely. His voice cracked but burned with urgency. "You're stronger than it, Michael. You must deny it. That's how it dies." Michael shook his head, tears streaking down his cheeks. "I can't," he sobbed again, weak. The stranger's hand tightened. "Yes, you can. Deny it now, or it takes everything. Your voice, your breath, your soul." The entity leaned closer, its cold breath brushing Michael's skin, its grin inches away. Michael's veins pulsed, his chest filled with fire, and he screamed, "You are not me." The room convulsed, shadows splitting apart like torn fabric, boards groaning as if the house itself was breaking under the force. The room trembled, walls shuddering as the entity's grin cracked into something monstrous. Michael screamed, "You are not me," and the words tore through the air like fire. The reflection staggered, its body splitting in jagged fractures, glowing light seeping from the cracks. Michael fell forward, gasping, clutching the floor as shards of shadow blew apart around him. The stranger gripped his arm, shouting, "Hold on!" Michael's body shook violently, his chest burning with each breath, but he felt the grip of the thing loosening. For the first time, he sensed the entity retreating, shrinking back into the darkness it had crawled from. The entity collapsed inward, its body splintering, until nothing but a black mist clung to the walls. Michael coughed, clutching his chest, whispering, "It's gone." The stranger's face tightened, his eyes grim. "No. It never leaves. It waits." Michael shook his head, tears dripping onto the floor. He whispered, "Then what do I do?" The stranger's gaze hardened as he rose to his feet. "You survive. You endure. That's the curse." Michael's chest ached with a grief that felt endless. He had not beaten it, only forced it away, for now. Michael staggered to his feet, each step heavy as though gravity itself pulled harder on him. The stranger turned away, his long coat brushing against the floorboards. Michael rasped, "Why help me?" His voice cracked, fragile. The stranger paused in the doorway, shadows framing his gaunt figure. "Because no one helped me," he said flatly. Michael's breath hitched as the man continued, "And because one day you'll do the same, for someone else." The words chilled him deeper than the entity ever had. He whispered, "I don't want this," but the stranger did not turn back. The house fell silent, heavy with the echo of what had passed. Michael moved toward the window, each step unsteady, his breath shallow. He stared at the cracked glass, where his reflection should have been. Instead, the surface remained dark, a blank void that refused to show him. His chest constricted, fear crawling anew. He whispered, "Show me," voice trembling, but the window stayed empty. The silence of that absence was worse than any grin. Michael's knees weakened as dread whispered through him. Maybe the reflection was not gone, only hiding, waiting for its return. Michael turned away, his body weak, his mind fractured by the night's horrors. He whispered, "It's over. though he did not believe it. The stranger was gone, leaving only silence and the faint creak of the house. Michael sank onto the couch, tears sliding down his face, exhaustion pulling at him. His eyes fluttered closed for a moment of rest. But from the cracked window behind him came a faint sound, soft, deliberate. A whisper, low and cold, spoke his name, Michael. His eyes snapped open, body frozen in terror. He knew then, the nightmare had only just begun.